I know that these people in Congress and in the administration are parents. They understand the damage that is done when stress is exacted on children by separating them from their families. Do they think these children deserve less than their children do in terms of care and love? And so this is not an immigration issue. This is a humanitarian issue. It's about the children. It's also about people seeking asylum. We have had the American Evangelical Association come and testify before us and saying the U.S. refugee resettlement program is the crown jewel of American humanitarianism. And what are we doing but rejecting that now? Don't take our words for it. The National Catholic Conference of Bishops says this is immoral. And in fact, today another letter opposing the legislation that the Republicans are putting forth. The Evangelical Immigration Table has said this is horrible and opposes this dividing children and their parents. Children and family, there's a sanctity to it that this administration has chosen to remove. And rather than taking responsibility for their actions, which some of them are, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, how horrible is that? But the president is saying, it's not my fault, I didn't do it. No, you did do it. You did it to the dreamers, and now you're doing it to the children. You can rescind this action in a moment. So an important point to know is that overwhelmingly the American people are opposed to separating families. They understand the importance of the relationship between children and their families, the damage that can be done to children's brains by the stress that is added by this separation. The list goes on. But also the fraud of the Republicans saying they're going to correct this in their bill when what they have in their bill makes matters worse for children. And those bills must be rejected. And with that, I again am honored to be with my colleagues here. They have a lot to say on all of this. I know you'll be hearing individually from some of them, but right now I'm very honored to yield to the distinguished chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus from New Mexico, Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham.
Thank you, Madam Leader, and thank you to my colleagues and the leadership of the minority caucuses in the Democratic caucus for working diligently to not only highlight this abhorrent effort by the federal government, but to make really clear that we're doing everything in our power to stop the President and Homeland Security from continuing to enact pain using the terminology zero tolerance for anyone breaking the law, which apparently for them and some in Congress is license to harm children. I mean, that's what it really is. This is more like a zero inhumanity policy. It is intended unequivocally not to just continue to punish asylum seekers and those seeking refuge constitutionally in this country by a system that is in fact broken. But instead of addressing those issues legitimately and productively and humanely, they are immorally now using these children and purposely enacting harm, so much harm, 2,700 children, that in fact now we're seeing the kinds of horrific responses, including the man who committed suicide. I can't think of another country where we would stand idly by and allow that country to treat children and families in this cruel, inhumane, inappropriate manner. The purpose of these trips by Congress is to continue to bring serious attention, and I'm sure this is happening to every member here. In my own community, my own district, I have families who are calling me in the middle of the night or coming to my office during the day who want to foster these children, who want to get on a bus, who want to fly out here immediately, who want to drive their own cars. We have teachers all across the country who want to organize trips. They want to stand outside, whether they're detention centers or these tent cities or even the refugee settlements, which we programs which we understand are necessary when we have unaccompanied minors. The notion that this country would continue to create these problems, and let's talk about who it is that's coming here. They are fleeing such horrific violence and rape, the kinds of conditions that every single one of us would run from in order to protect our children and our families. We reject them here, and then we inflict the kind of pain where we separate them from their children. They have no idea what happens next, including these children. And when everyday Americans are standing up and willing to do what they think, whatever it would take to make a difference in the lives of these children, of these families, how is it possible that we don't have a president who would rescind this zero inhumanity policy immediately? In the same way, he could rescind his decision on DACA. He has complete power over these situations. And the notion that we collectively don't have enough power in response to hold this federal administration and the White House accountable is exactly the purpose of these trips. So we're going to continue to highlight these issues, to bring justice back to a system of asylum and refugee status in this country, to make sure that our Constitution is upheld. And we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that every community, including this one, is clear about what is really happening and will join us to do practical, productive efforts to make sure that we're protecting people in this country and not the opposite. And with that, I'm very honored to introduce another incredible champion on these issues, Judy Chu, who introduced herself briefly, who is the chairwoman of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. Judy.
Today, we are a group of 14 Congress members that have come to investigate the cruelest act that is going on in America right now, and that is the separation of children from their parents. This morning, we went to a shelter. We saw 62 young kids. Amongst them were unaccompanied minors and children who were separated from their parents. And the mental health workers there told us that these were children who were fleeing gang violence from places like Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, and that they needed to be able to live a life, just live even their life at all, because of the threats of gang violence that could certainly result in murder and worse. And so we know that it's important for gang violence to be one of the reasons for asylum. And it is unconscionable that it cannot be at this point. But it's even more unconscionable that children are being separated from their parents. And now we have over 2,000 of them that have been separated. When they are separated, they're ripped from the arms of their parents. The parents don't even know whether they are there or how long they will be separated, whether it could be a week or months. And it is up to President Trump to own the fact that he made this policy, that he made this zero tolerance policy. Trump started this, and Trump can end this. He can pick up the phone, and he can stop this. And he should not be using these children as a bargaining chip for what he wants in an immigration bill, a big border wall. He should not be using the lives of these young, vulnerable children for this. So I say, President Trump, do the decent thing, pick up the phone, stop this unconscionable policy. And now, I'd like to open this up for questions and answers.
Yes.
Joshua Smith, San Diego, Union-Tribune.
Yes, Josh.
Today, Jeff Sessions said that this is about deterring people from crossing illegally with children, often in places that are dangerous, making long trips through the desert, right? So this idea that, yes, maybe some short-term pain, but long-term, we're going to get people to use the proper channels. How do you respond?
I would respond the same way that I would to what he said about the Bible, that it's just not true. It's just not true. The reality is that we're using cruelty here, not as a way to prevent people from coming, but just to be cruel. I don't think it does anything to stop people from coming, frankly. You heard the conditions that they're living under. I don't think it does anything like that. I think, once again, he used the crutch of the Bible, and that didn't work for him. So now he's trying to use something else, and it's just simply untrue.
I want to add to that because in Congress, we have a $640 million investment for the Northern Triangle countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. We have been working on an infrastructure to help children there in their own home country, to help them escape violent areas within those countries. That system was working until President Trump was elected and decided he wanted to utilize these kids as a way to get a border wall. So what I have to say is we are working on an infrastructure in the Northern Triangle. Let's continue with that policy. Let's continue to try to help them in their home country. And then let's not deny families from staying together, especially children that are lactating mothers, and we're ripping them apart.
I'm sorry.
Let me just say also,
Louis, if you come over.
Just identify yourself.
I'm Congresswoman Norma Torres, 35th.
Congressman Correa, Orange County, California. When I was visiting the children, I asked one of the counselors, tell me about these kids, and confirm what I thought, which is when these kids are growing up in Central America, they're given a choice. Get a certain age, you either join a gang, MS-13 that the president talks about, or you die. They pick a third, which is go north in search of possibly a survival alternative. So given that situation, how is this going to be deterrent? Let's get down and come up with some practical solutions that save lives, and in the name of God, do what's correct, do what's humane, and what's American by our tradition.
What was the facility you all visited today?
Southwest?
Casa San Diego, the Southwest Keys facility.
Southwest Keys.
And Lou, can you paint a picture of what it looked like? Tell us what you saw.
Well, I think it's really more important to focus on the policy, because when my colleagues were speaking, I was reminded of conversations I had with the administration, where they would say these parents were irresponsible to take their children across a desert, and so we have to take the children away from these parents because they endangered the lives of their children. Understand their basic premise. The fact is, as Mr. Correa and Congresswoman Torres and others have said, they had no choice. It was a matter of life and death. They couldn't stay there. So for this administration to say, as they have said, we know better. We're going to take the children away. We're going to put them in foster homes. We're going to take them away from their parents who broke the law. There's just something fundamentally wrong with their reasoning, except when you understand that they're doing this, as Congresswoman Torres said, they're doing this to get other bad immigration policy. But as I say, this isn't an immigration matter. This is a humanitarian. This is a family matter. And I say to the President, we have zero tolerance for your neglect and for your policy of selecting, separating children from their parents. We have zero tolerance for your having this number. The administration said today the number could go up to 30,000 children by August. 30,000 children. Do you have tolerance for that? And we have zero tolerance for the bills in Congress that they are touting as being positive in this regard, which make matters worse. So understand, it's not a question of facility. That's a whole other subject. It's a question of policy humanitarianism, abandoning the principles of our country in terms of respect for individuals and the sanctity of family.
I think that's...
Why don't we go right? Hold on a second. I think she had a question to us, Rebecca. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just curious, was Casa San Diego the only facility that you visited, and can you provide any kind of picture as to what you thought of the places you visited?
Well, we've all been to several facilities on the border. No, but this morning.
Yeah, so we've been to two. We're going to be going to 4 facilities altogether today. But the facility where the children were is the one I think you're specifically asking about. And so we were there this morning. We saw children from the age, I believe, 6 to 17. Were the people there trying hard? I think so. But I mean, what I saw is a bunch of little kids running around, hoping and wishing their parents were there, coming to visit, not us. We showed up. I think that they were happy that we showed up, that someone cared about them. But boy, wouldn't have they been glad if they saw their mom or dad walk through the door. That's really what they wanted. The leader was talking about it, but one clinician in particular told us about the trauma. He said, all these kids suffer huge trauma. Can you imagine being ripped away from your mom or your dad? Many of you are parents. If you had your child ripped away from you, imagine the trauma that they would suffer. That's what he explained, and that's what was certainly in my mind when I think of that facility. Not bad people there, I have to tell you. I think that they're trying hard with what they have, but it's just these poor kids that have been ripped away from their parents.
Isn't it true that this has been a policy for years? The only difference right now is the
No,
frequency.
that's not true.
No, because of the frequency, because of the zero tolerance. But
No, that's not true. That's not true at all.
Thank you for the question, so that we can clarify.
So has this been the policy? No, this has not been the policy. The policy has been to try to keep families together. So yes, before there's been unaccompanied minors. Yes, kids have arrived without their mom and dads. But no, we didn't take children and rip them away from their moms when they were trying to nurse their kids. We didn't do stuff like that. No, that's new. That's not. So anyone that says, hasn't this always been our policy? No, it hasn't been our policy. This is an inhumane policy that just started, and that's why we're all so mad about it. No, there have been situations, of course, when kids have arrived unaccompanied. Yes. And we do the best we can. But we haven't ripped them away from their moms.
But it has been a policy that was rejected by President Obama and President George W. Bush.
That's right.
And I just want to add, as a member of Homeland Security, just several weeks ago, met with former Secretary Jay Johnson that says they went out of their way to try to build facilities to keep the family unit together. And so that is very different than what is happening now. Now, one of the facilities that we went to today, the second facility, was where we saw the parents. I'm representing 3 of the women who are at that facility and had a chance to talk to them, to hear them tell their story, that they had no chance to say goodbye to their kids, that they were put into a room in some instances and were just told that they weren't going to see their kids anymore, was heartbreaking. And that is what is happening, and that is the injustice. And this is something that we need to continue to shed light on and to hear the stories of these women. There's nothing short of a jail cell. That is what we saw today. We saw jails where we saw people in blue jumpsuits and orange jumpsuits, and when you sit in a room and you talk to them, they break down. In some instances, one woman hadn't spoken to her child maybe once in 30 days. He was shipped to New York. That's injustice. And others not knowing where their kids are or what's happening, and how can you help connect me to my kid or tell me what is going on? These are some of the conversations that I had today with 3 of the mothers in these facilities who have been separated from their kids. And I will say one more thing. When we first got there, we were told nobody in this facility has been separated from their kids. To which I said, not true, because I represent 3 of the mothers. And all of a sudden, the number changed, right? How much other information did we get today that's inaccurate?
Were the facilities that you saw, was it just boys, was it girls? I believe Casa San Diego may be just boys, but did you see a mix of both today? Or what did you guys see as far as the children?
So Casa San Diego has both. We saw the boys. They do have girls also in 2 separate houses, which we did not go to see today. They have both. So the children that we saw today were boys.
They're mostly boys.
So, also, so don't take it from us that this is a new policy. Congressman Jimmy Gomez from Los Angeles. Casa San Diego specifically referred to the new family separation policy. So that's not us. They even had a memo from, I believe, ICE or Border Patrol on how to handle calls between the kids that were separated from their parents and their parents who are in other facilities. So don't take it from us that this is a new policy if you don't want to believe us, but it's true.
What is your message to President Trump at this point? We're debating semantics over.
The message to Mr. Trump is stop this inhumane, barbaric policy, rescind your actions, and take responsibility for it instead of blaming it on other people. Well, you want to psychoanalyze the President of the United States? There are enough hours in the day for that. But I will say that the more the public speaks up about this, because they say this is not about immigration. This is about humanity. It's about family. It's about who we are as a country.